Hello and what is up, YouTube? My name is G3Iron and welcome to today's discussion where we are taking a look at the POE announcement news on Eldritch Altars FAQ. If you are new to the channel or you're coming back after my year hiatus, just like I'm back and balding and better than ever, then you can, of course, like, subscribe, and ding the bell to be notified about future video discussions on POE and gaming-related stuff just like this one. So let's take a dive in and see what the questions are and what GGG's answers are to Eldritch Altars changes in the upcoming 3.20 Forbidden Sanctum League. So starting from the top, yesterday we shared a balanced manifesto that outlined the upcoming changes to Eldritch Altars. Today, we're sharing a short and sweet FAQ to provide some more information. So question number 1, can we get the altar mods on the map mod UI? Answer, yes, we've added this in 3.20. That is always good news whenever UI in the game is actually accessible and is clear on the sorts of content that we are interacting with. I think it was Metamorph 3.9. Shout out, by the way, to those of you who are old enough. Back in my day, this is a back in my day moment just for a second. Back in Metamorph when it first came out, and we didn't see on the mini map. Do you remember that? When Metamorph first came out, you didn't see which monsters on the mini map actually had the vials or the jars or the interactable stuff that you needed to interact with in order to activate and do all the sorts of stuff that you wanted to do with Metamorph. And we didn't have that. And actually, at that point in time, we also didn't have the helpful little UI pull-up table that now is so available and so helpful. And we all just assume that it comes with each league that's available that's slightly above where your character skills are. That improvement was huge. I believe that came out maybe within a week or two of Metamorph. Maybe it was a month even into the league. But they worked on it and they added it so that way the UI and the monsters that you were trying to interact with Metamorph actually showed up on the minimap. So anything that can add clarity to the content that we're interacting with and the style of content that we're presented with is always a thumbs up, at least from me. So, second question, can you make altars more readable in the heat of combat? Answer, we've discussed community feedback around this, specifically to consider options around instance pausing, color indicators, or reward symbols. Each of these options has their own drawbacks, so we won't be making any changes on this front for now. The best thing to do is to finish killing the surrounding monsters before reading the altar. Okay, so that's, at least in terms of pattern of play and pace of play, while that's going to slow down some people who just want to go zoomy and never want to read anything, that in theory should be okay, right? Because if you go zoomy and you never want to read anything anyway, no matter what Grinding Gear Games does to give you an indicator about what you're about to interact with on the Eldritch Altar, it doesn't matter. You don't want to read it anyway, so you're just going to, boom, go, you're already zoomy boy. Whereas anybody who does want to pause or slow down or take the time to read it, it's a little bit more like a strongbox-ish sort of thing where you're going, okay, what's on this and do I need to be aware of this and should I clear everything else out before I actually interact with this sort of interaction? So that to me doesn't sound so bad. Okay, moving on to the third question. How common are awakened gems from the Maven? Answer, when you kill the Maven herself, the chance of getting an awakened gem is quite common. The drop chance from Maven witnessed map bosses is a lot lower than this because these fights occur more often. Okay, so you've got to have a lower drop chance on more frequently realized fights. Okay, that makes sense, right? The drop chance from Maven witnessed map bosses is a lot lower because there's a whole lot more witnessed map boss fights than there are just killing Maven. Okay, so that makes sense. The goal is that they're common enough that it feels worthwhile running Maven witness maps while not having awakened gems feel too common and significantly lowering their value. Something that I've noticed since I've come back, just in the last 2 weeks or so, as I'm reading more things, I am hearing a lot more about value and a lot more about trade and a lot more about acquiring items. Just the language of value, just even that language in and of itself. We used to talk about how items had weight I want to say that was maybe 2 or 3 years ago that was kind of the buzzword that was being used about items and the drop chance and the weight, the feeling, the desire of having a particular item, and its impact on your character. And now I've just noticed this. I don't know if this is a theme. I don't know if this is just me bringing this to the table and this has always been language here and I'm just noticing it now for the first time. But I would say that that's an interesting thing that I've started to notice over the last couple of weeks, is coming back, preparing for the 3.20 Forbidden Sanctum League, and seeing a lot of language about value, a lot more open discussion from Grinding Gear Games and their communication posts about value of things and how trade impacts things and how drop rates and trade just really play into each other. They really do exist and really do play into each other. And on the one hand, I give Grinding Gear Games credit for that, right? For years, players were saying, hey, couldn't we just talk about how trade impacts things and how trade does impact the game design and how drop rates and trade should interact? And so really Grinding Gear Games in some ways is just responding to what players have been asking for several years, at least, openly acknowledging that there is available trade in softcore, hardcore trade leagues, and that does impact the way how the game is designed. So that's pretty interesting to notice that language. And ideally, what I'm hearing from Grinding Gear Games is, hey, go kill Maven, right? Maybe you'll get one to drop on your way up to Maven, but go kill Maven. That's what I'm hearing from that. All right, next question. How common are rusted scarabs in the core drop pool? Answer, the exact weighting hasn't been finalized yet, but currently we're looking at them being slightly less common than rogue markers. Note that is on top of other sources of scarabs like altars, delirium, betrayal, etc. As we mentioned, these drop less frequently from altars in 3.20, but other sources haven't changed. All right, so if you are I'm just going to say it, if you are a poorer player and you're having to constantly use rusted scarabs, and that's what you're aiming for, that's interesting. Just because you want to target specific content, right? If you're at the top end of POE's, economy and you can purchase whatever kind of scarabs you want to purchase, you don't really care. But that's interesting. That's kind of interesting. That they're specific. I guess here's what I mean by I should give you some more of my thoughts on that. The reason why that's interesting is, why is it that it matters that rusted scarabs, that how common rusted scarabs are in the core drop pool? Why aren't we talking about scarabs in general across the way? So that's just interesting that they're specifically answering that. Maybe drop me a comment down below. Maybe I've missed some drama about rusted scarabs in particular over the last year or over the last league or two. But that's interesting that specifically is being addressed, whereas other sorts of scarabs and their drops aren't necessarily being addressed. Like, they didn't answer this question, or they didn't frame this question as how common are scarabs in the core drop pool. It's how common are rusted scarabs in connection to Eldritch altars, in addition to all the other ways that you can get scarabs. So it's interesting. It's interesting. Okay, next question. Why does currency drop in stacks of 1 now? Wait a minute. Weren't we just talking about how awesome it is that currency drops in stacks more than 1? This change only applies to rewards from influenced monsters. Okay. Altar rewards that say things like map bosses drop 3 Vol orbs will still drop in stacks of 3, requiring 1 click for pickup. Okay, good. Less clicks, please. Like, we have wrists. You want us to keep playing the game. We would like to keep playing the game. Our wrists need to work to keep playing the game. One of the goals of the altar changes from the outset was to retain the feel of altars such that the gameplay feels familiar, as we're generally happy with how that feels to play. Part of retaining this means we want to keep the frequency of encountering Eldritch altars relatively common. If we want to give you altars relatively often, it means we're giving out rewards relatively often, as one of the ways of balancing this is to make the stack sizes of those rewards lower. Okay, so they're lowering how rewarding Eldritch altars are. They're saying, hey, you want to interact with them? Great, you can interact with them, but it's going to feel worse with each stack of stuff that gets dropped. This is what I shared a couple of days ago on one of these videos and one of these updates and manifesto posts. I am much more happy to have just nothing drop. And then when something drops, it's really, really good. And to have longer spaces of nothing dropping. But I recognize that I am not always the target audience of Path of Exile. I am used to not picking things up for a while. I'm used to just saying, I'm good. I don't need to pick up this or that, or everything's going to get filtered out. So I recognize I'm not necessarily the vast majority of players that are playing Path of Exile. But to me, I would much rather have less things to pick up or less times to stop and pick something up, because it means that I'm still killing stuff and still moving and still progressing, and it feels like I'm progressing towards something. Whereas the more times you have to stop to pick things up, the more you're stopping killing things. And yes, you're getting rewarded more with your drop. But I feel like that's almost a tension there of personal player preference on loot filters, on how often you want to stop and pick things up. I am much more of I will only stop and pick things up if I really want it. Otherwise, it's fine. It doesn't matter to me. I'm just going onwards towards my other goals. So that's interesting. Most currency rewards from influence monsters are already dropped in stacks of 1, but there were a few outliers, most notably map currency rewards. The outliers are generally the only thing that is changing here in terms of stack size. All right, last question. Are you nerfing heist and expedition rewards? We have no plans regarding this. Okay, there you go. Also, I got to read this top comment by Clumsy Parasite just because this is great. He says, she says, 3.20 will be the greatest league since Ritual. Mark my words, Rayclass. Hashtag in Chris we trust. Hashtag make Rayclass great again. Well, there you go. Do you share? Do you share that particular opinion? Drop a comment down below with your own thoughts about these changes and these updates that are going to be coming through and be live alongside the 3.20 Forbidden Sanctum League. All of these updates and changes to Eldritch Altars, it sounds like, are going to be live with this particular league. It doesn't sound like there's going to be any hesitations or any drops or any hiccups or any, take one league off sort of thing like what they did with Harvest. It sounds like it's all just going to roll out here with 3.20 simultaneously. So that's exciting. But feel free to leave me a comment down below if I've said anything today that's made you go, oh my gosh, I can't believe he said that. So feel free to complain down below in the comments. And I do hope that the upcoming 3.20 Forbidden Sanctum League is the league that a Mirror of Calandra drops for you.